In this module here, I'm just going to cover the top 10 things you need to know to pass this exam. Now, this is, of course, based on my opinion, my thought is I like to try to remember the easiest things first. And the reason is because you're going to take a test and you're going to have a limited amount of time. Now, this exam, honestly, there's probably plenty of time in most cases for most people. But once again, I want you to be able to go in there and take the exam and just knock out the stuff that you can easily commit to memory. And here is my thought on the top 10 things to remember for this exam. So let's talk about it. The first one is know your Gcloud commands. Now, during the modules, I went through Gcloud commands with you. These are the most important ones. But do make sure you know how to go and use the Gcloud command to verify projects, verify APIs, how to verify multiple projects, but also add new projects. So make sure you go to the Gcloud page where it has the documentation for Gcloud. Type those commands, play them back and forth. I was surprised by the number of Gcloud commands and just realize that they do want you to prove you know how to use Gcloud. That's just a fact. So remember too, one of the easiest things to remember is you're going to use the project ID. You're not going to use the project number or the name when it comes to like describing a project. That's sort of easy to remember. If you can remember that, that'll help you out, because some of the commands will have you sort of, have you choose basically, from what I remember, between like the name and the ID and the number. And if you don't know which one to select, you have like a 50% chance of picking the right one. Even if you know the syntax, you may have forgot, is it project ID or project name, for example. Okay, Kubernetes. Now, Kubernetes was really, in my opinion, heavily tested. I personally saw, I swear, 5 questions on Kubernetes. Now, again, on a test with 50 questions, that's a lot of container questions. Know your container terms. Know what a pod is. Know what a cluster is. Make sure you go out and look at the Kubernetes commands and practice with them. Know use cases, right? Another thing too around containers, but you need to know the difference between container registry, container builder, and cloud source repositories. These are additional services that could be used. Again, if you want a GitHub, you want to use cloud source repositories, for example. Cloud SQL versus Cloud Spanner. Once again, know the use case for each. Know how to scale them. Remember, Cloud SQL is regional. This is not going to be multi-regional. Now, you need to realize if you need to have that global exposure, you need to really use Cloud Spanner. Now, Cloud SQL is faster and Cloud Spanner is slower. Also, too, Cloud Spanner really scales horizontally, whereas Cloud SQL really does not. Okay, know your use cases. You have to know why to use cloud storage, why use App Engine, for example. Why would you want to use App Engine versus Container Engine or versus Kubernetes Engine now? So know those differences. Cloud PubSub, Cloud Data Flow. Just know your basic services, because again, a lot of these could be give me questions if you just know, should I use Cloud SQL or should I use Cloud Spanner? The questions referencing a global exposure, more regional versus multi-regional, then you know probably where to go. But again, look at the question. Now, know how to deploy Windows on Compute Engine. I was surprised by the number of questions on deploying on Compute Engine, just because, again, there's just so many other things to cover. But you definitely expect a couple questions on Compute Engine and deploying Linux and Windows machine types. Understand what an image is. Understand that an image, is what a really global, right? You can move that around as long as it's not, attached, right? Also, too, you don't want to use like a local SSD and try to move that around as well. But when it comes to deploying Windows on compute, for example, know the best way to log in. Know that you could use your own keys and use Google's keys. You could use appliances as well. Know the authentication mechanisms. IAM permission basics. Now, once again, remember that this exam is going to expect you to know the specific areas in IAM. Go into the console, play around, do it all night and day, because again, they want you to know what menu and what submenu to select and know the easiest way, for example, to delete a service account or to go in and create a service account, know where to do that. Also, too, how do you set up logging so that you could log permissions? Also, too, there is a couple questions that referenced auditors. Now, this is where you got to sit down and think and say, do I want to set up a custom permission or do I want to use a legacy permission, for example? Do I want it granular or do I not? Look at the real requirements. Stackdriver, several questions on Stackdriver. Just know how to set it up. Know the difference between the modules and also the account types. Question on, for example, how long do you save log files? Is it 7, 30 days? Well, it really depends on what? It depends on your subscription. But also, too, if you need to query against Stackdriver logs, you could, of course, export them to BigQuery or cloud storage, for example. BigQuery pricing. I was, again, when I went through the pricing module with you, I was surprised by the number of questions asking about, BigQuery. I don't personally believe pricing is really something a cloud engineer should worry about, but Google wants you to know it. So go to the cloud pricing calculator that Google has. Look at the fact that there's two ways that the subscription works. There's on demand and then there's flat rate. Again, better pricing is going to be with what? On demand. However, let's say you don't have enough storage. Realize that storage is an additional cost, right? Lastly, when it comes to billing, and again, these are the easier things I think to remember to help you sort of secure a passing score, hopefully. Know how to query, but also save billing information. So go into the console, play around with it, save your billing information, save your, your bills, export them over. Just make sure you know it, because that could be, these could be really easy questions, just my opinion. That's about all that I had for this module. And remember, these are the top 10 things to remember before taking the exam. Certainly not the only things. But once again, go through the course, document everything, make sure you know it, and go in, take the exam and pass it. Let's continue on to the next module.